Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to StartupStarter Presents No Code Week, Day 1, where we have today a great panel of no code influencers, experts, and platforms to show you all you need to know about no coding. My name is Lorel Scott. I am the co-founder, head of partnerships and platform at StartupStarter.co, and we are happy to welcome you to No Code Week. Today I have with me Bubble, Adalo, Tapcart, WeAreNoCode, Apps Without Code, as well as Brand Factory. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to my great co-host, Christian Peverelli, as he helps me welcome in the panelists.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christian Peverelli. I'm the co-founder of WeAreNoCode. Our mission is to empower non-technical founders and the next generation of digital creators. And yeah, I mean, first off, we're going to keep this pretty conversational. I want to thank Lorel. I want to thank Jose and all the other awesome people who've helped out with this conference, all the sponsors as well. I'm so excited because I literally just get to have a conversation right now with so many other awesome people, some of which I've met before, some of which I'm meeting for the first time this evening if you're in the UK, this afternoon if you are in Los Angeles, and anywhere else in the world, it's probably going to be a different time. So we'll bring in maybe the individuals in one by one. What do you think?
Yeah, man, it's really good. I just want to, let everyone know. So we have created this amazing 9-day experience for you to immerse yourself in everything you need to know how to automate and build your brand and bring your idea to life. So for one, I want to start by thanking our sponsors, Tapcart. Thank you very much. We'd like to also thank our media partner Parlay Me, as well as Beam Conversing, as well as .xyz for their sponsorship and helping put this together. The experience will live inside of StartupStarter. So when you go back to that link, startupstarter.co/nocodeweek, you will be taken to the live event page where you can see all of the panelists, everyone who's a part of No Code Week. In addition to that, you can access and join all of the live sessions. We have curated this for an entire 2 weeks for you guys. So hop on board and we are ready to go.
Yeah, it should be really, really fun. I think a lot of people potentially watching right now don't really know what we're talking about with no code. No code essentially is a way to build software without having to write code or understand coding language. So that's kind of like the basic definition. It's also known as visual programming. And right now we're bringing in some amazing experts who, are part of platforms that can be used to build software, and others who are just prolific no-coders, which is the term used for a no-code developer. So yeah, it should be super exciting. Let's bring all these individuals in one by one. Representing Tapcart, we have Sina. So Sina, if you can jump in right now. How's it going?
Hey, Christian, doing well, thank you.
Yeah, we'll bring everyone in one by one, and then we'll do intros. So next, I wanted to introduce Lacey from Adalo.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, great to have you.
Hey, Lacey.
Hey.
Let's bring in Tara from Apps Without Code.
You're on mute, Tara.
I'm talking to myself. Hi, how are you doing?
Welcome. Good seeing you.
Yeah.
Story of 2021, right? It's like, are you on mute? Am I on mute?
That's right.
Love it. Okay, and we're going to bring in from Brand Factory, Doc.
Hey, how you doing?
How's it going, Doc? Great to have you here.
Thanks, man. No, awesome to be here. Great to see everyone.
And finally, that was kind of like a silence. Sorry. Great to see you too, Doc. Yeah, I feel like I was the one who should have answered that. Yeah, as the co-moderator here. And then Nick from Bubble.
Hi, everyone.
How's
Thanks.
it going?
Super excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's just start off by each one of us kind of giving a 30-second, 1 minute sort of intro to who we are and sort of the company we're representing today. And then we'll kick it off with some kind of simpler questions. I'm sure all of us get the same 10 questions over and over. So we can, after that, move into kind of some of the deeper dive and let the conversation flow, essentially. So let's start off with Sina. Why don't you give us a little 1 minute on yourself and Tapcart?
Sounds good. I'm Sina, one of the founders of Tapcart. We're based here in Santa Monica. I actually launched one of the first iPhone apps back in 2008. It's called Pop Quiz, a pop culture trivia game. My previous startup, TestMax, was the first mobile test prep courses for the iPhone and iPad for the bar exam and LSAT. So I've been doing mobile apps for about 13 years now. And Tapcart is essentially a Shopify for mobile apps. It allows you to create a mobile app for your Shopify store so you can design it, launch it, manage it really easily and keep it updated in real time. And the biggest benefit of having an app is that it lets you build an own marketing channel of push notification subscribers.
Amazing. That's going to be super exciting. We'll talk a little bit more about that and sort of app clips that you'll introduce us to a little bit later. Lacey, why don't you give us your little rundown? I know you've been all over the place with awesome stuff. I've been following you, and I think a lot of other people here too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really glad to be here. My name is Lacey Kesler, and I'm the head of education for Adalo. And our platform enables makers to create their app ideas, to take them from simply an idea to a reality using our software. So I'm really excited to be here and chat about all things no code and apps.
Yeah, and if we're lucky, we might even get to see her daughter, whose babysitter was a little bit late.
Yes, it's
So,
very likely they will hop on.
Absolutely, no problem there. Tara, why don't you give us a little 1 minute about yourself and apps without code?
Yeah, so my name is Tara Reed. I am CEO and founder of Apps Without Code. So we are an online education company. We're an online school. We teach people how to build apps and businesses around those apps without knowing how to code. We particularly specialize in focusing on folks who are not technical, but specifically like not tech adjacent. So like you are not having a lot of product knowledge or those sorts of things too. So in 2014, I did a TEDx talk on building apps without code. I had really been like sharing my own journey because I had launched years before that a art matchmaking startup called Collecto. And so I built this algorithm that matched people to artwork based on their taste. We went through 500 startups and raised capital for that. This was before we called it no code. It was like not really called anything back then. And so if you fast forward today, I run an online school. We've trained 150,000 entrepreneurs. We have about 150 people who start our 8-week training program every month. And it's a whole lot of fun to see them bring their ideas to life.
Awesome. It's always great to see the people, right? The people that you're assisting and helping. It's just like that's huge for us as well. Doc, why don't you give us a little 1 minute about yourself and Brand Factory?
Hey, well, thanks so much. So my name is Doc Williams. I am the founder of Brand Factory. And basically, I try to teach people how to make money as fast as possible using no-code tools. So that encompasses a lot of different types of businesses, but I basically try to work with all different types, from a company called Make a Wood Sign. You can imagine what they do, all the way to different companies like VaynerMedia and others, really taking away barriers of what you have to learn. And it's just like, what do you want to accomplish? And let's just go build that. So I started in 2010 with a small company that, like Noah Kagan, had AppSumo. And I was like, man, I need a lot of tech because I was running a gym at the time. And that's when I started building. And then throughout the years, I had a couple different companies, including I was a crime scene cleaner. And then I was a drone pilot and created a bunch of stuff. I opened a Ninja Warrior gym. And then people kept saying, like, could you build this kind of thing for me? And there we go. So I just like building. I like talking to a lot of people. And now I just host a YouTube channel. So people just either call in or they message me, what do they want me to build? And then I build 3 businesses in 1 hour every single Wednesday.
That is beyond rad. I can't tell you how amazing and awesome that is. And I love some of your past positions as well. That really adds a lot of a lot to this. We'll definitely get into one of those throughout this conversation. Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Bubble?
Awesome. Thanks, Christian. Yeah, so my name is Nick. I'm a product manager here at Bubble in New York City. And Bubble is a leading platform for building full-scale web applications without any code. So it's especially exciting to be here, being part of an entrepreneurial event surrounded by no code. For Bubble, I spent the past 4.5 years building a software business in the live music industry. And I didn't know about all these amazing tools back in 2016. So I learned how to code to start that business, and kind of went through all of the hoops that you would building a traditional software business. Fell in love with product and discovered Bubble. And after using tools like Webflow, I really started to buy into the mission that no code is, in terms of democratizing access to software, and also just removing a lot of the hurdles and being able to focus on your business and focus on product. So super excited to be part of this movement at Bubble, and very excited to be a part of this panel here today.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'll
I'll mention too that everybody keep up this week, because you will hear from several of these companies as they show you their product more in depth. And then our guy Doc over here, he will build each one of their products live during No Code Week. So make sure you stay tuned, keep checking the event homepage, and you'll see the entire calendar. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun. And I think all of us are running like 2 or 3 different events. I have my co-founder, Eddie, who will be on also on the another panel. It's like, it's great to talk to all these people who are like specialized, when we see that we're just like this tiny little ball of people on Twitter who are yelling at each other about all the same things. I since have chosen to stay away from Twitter, but I think that it's super to see how this whole thing is progressing. Throughout last year, for those of you who are not aware, no code just pretty much exploded. It was just like during the pandemic, I think, whether it's people finally taking action on the business ideas that they have, and also the development of these platforms and how powerful they're becoming, Bubble, Adalo, Tapcart, and Webflow, they're all going in kind of different directions and kind of certain times in similar directions. But in the end of the day, like, I like kind of like what Doc said in terms of just like, it's about the people in the end of the day, like it's really about empowering, I think. And so the name of this little panel is No Code is a Game Changer. So I'd love to kind of just go around and like see like what's one thing from each of you that you think is like really exciting for you within this movement, or within one of the specific tools potentially. Really up to you. So let's start off with Sina.
For us, I think it's just allowing people to have access to a native mobile app. Eric and I, before we started Tapcart in late 2016, early 2017, we both had custom mobile app shops. We did apps for HBO. We did the Coachella app, the Game of Thrones app one year. We did the Heineken Coachella app one year. And all these projects took anywhere from 9 to 12 months to complete. Several hundreds of thousands of dollars we would charge. And if you think about it, even if you scope this tech product and feature out perfectly and execute it perfectly, which, as you know, never happens in tech, it would be released months later, maybe 6 months at the fastest. And there's already a new version of the iOS and Android operating system by then. So you're building something that's already going to be outdated within release, even if you execute it perfectly. So just like what Shopify did, making it really easy for anyone to launch an e-commerce store without having to go to an agency, spend tens of thousands of dollars, wait several months. You can essentially build one in a matter of hours, really. And we allow people to do that for mobile apps. So we kind of look at ourselves as a Shopify for mobile apps. And instead of having to be a Nike or a Pretty Little Thing or some huge brand just to have an e-commerce store with like in-house development teams and all that, now you can be a one-person Shopify store and have your own mobile app as well.
Love it. Really cool. How about you, Lacey? What excites you about this movement right now? What do you think is going to move the ball the most? You're on mute.
I didn't know you cut out when you said the name, so I was just waiting for like more context to hop on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just like,
I wanted to be sure. I didn't want to be that awkward person. So I'm really excited about a lot of things. What I really love seeing, and I talk with a lot of makers regularly about what they're building, and they just seeing their eyes light up when they realize that they can create their own software and like get all of these ideas out of their head and start putting them into practice, start working a system to see, okay, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? And one of the things about Adalo that I love so much is that we have all of these pre-built components for our makers to use. But we also have the marketplace that allows for developers to come in and build React components that they can use within their apps. So we are no code and low code, which is like we're marrying the two. So it really works well for different types of apps that aren't perhaps or they're more in the box if you're needing something a little bit different. So those are definitely some things I'm really excited about.
Perfect. Yeah. No, it's. I think we're all excited about the things that you've mentioned till now. Tara, what's your take on it?
Yeah, so for me, I'm most excited about getting to see no code in completely unsexy industries. So we work with a lot of people who have subject matter expertise, like they've had a job in manufacturing or healthcare or education, and places where the tech industry is just like not spending that much time or as much time as they could building beautiful products. But those people have had a job in that industry. They know that there are some gaps that they think that they could fill, and they have an idea for software to fill that. And so I love seeing how, and I think the biggest opportunity for no code actually is for people to take it and to launch it, to use it to launch apps and products in unsexy industries. For an example, we have an alumni of our program who knew a lot about manufacturing and like assembly lines. And I didn't know this, but like a lot of assembly lines in the US and the Midwest, they still track everything with pen, paper, and a clipboard, but everybody's got a phone in their pocket, right? And so he built an app to track the process of assembly lines, and his first customer was Coca-Cola, who licensed the app from him and white labeled it, right? Or people who are building products for hospitals and doctors. And so like those are the really exciting places for me where I get to see people have subject matter expertise in a completely non-sexy industry build really cool products. And that's a lot of what we do and help people with it apps without code, but that's definitely my favorite part.
Amazing. Yeah. I feel very much the same way. Also, we work with a lot of founders. So what about you, Doc? What are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing I was thinking about. Internal tools, I think a lot of times where people think it has to be in the App Store, but there are so many things that you can build that are integral for your business that aren't the shiny objects that people are saying like, oh, it's going to be the next Clubhouse or this. It's like things that can really move your business to the next level. And now you have the tools to build it yourself. And I was thinking about one thing in particular. Now, this might be going down the rabbit hole. And if you're very new to no code or tech, this is going to be a new term, but understanding the power of APIs. And APIs are basically what it is, allows you to have access to another component and you can get the information. So imagine you're at a library, you ask a librarian, hey, I'm looking for this kind of book. The librarian goes and picks it up. That's the power of doing a call. So if you're typing something into Google, if you look in the bar, like you're calling Google to get that information from you. So you can actually, as a no-coder, build out a command and get the information you're looking for. And now there are very simple platforms for allowing you to do API calls. So I really think this is going to be the year where just so many interesting micro SaaS, so software as a service, so platforms like MailChimp and things like that, you could be building your own because you know how to use API calls. So I'm really excited for this year and all of that. And then I dove into something called Cloud Vision APIs, which is how Google identifies images. And now their API, there's ways that you can identify. So say, for instance, you take a picture, it will now recognize what's happening in the picture. So there's just so many things going on in that world. And I know that might be in a deeper tunnel somewhere, but I think so many people are going to be able to use that coming up this year. And yeah, I'm excited.
Totally love that. And like, I think something that people need to understand is like, hey, when we say no code, it sounds a bit exclusive, but it really ranges from like complete pure no code where you're not coding at all the way to like pure code. And it's just saying like, hey, like you can build a bunch of stuff really quickly with no code. And then, yeah, now the power of APIs and talking about what you're talking about right now, Doc, going a bit deeper into that. My co-founder actually built Proofreader.ai, tapping into Google's Vision API, and it's visual recognition. The whole thing's built out in no code, and then a little bit of coding around the edges to bring in that. And it's like the power of the things that you can now build are becoming insane. Nick, tell us a little bit about what's getting you excited about in the no-code realm.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say aside from widening the access, widening who can be a tech entrepreneur, I think there are two things that really excite me. The first is just speed to market, right? Like if you're, Sina was talking about this earlier, you might spend months speccing something out and then building, and by the time you release it, it could be outdated, or your customers' needs could have changed, or market needs could have changed. And with building on a platform like Bubble or Adalo, or setting up your store, you're getting in front of your customers within a matter of weeks. And then you're iterating on your product in front of real customers, right? You're gathering that feedback in real time. And the idea of the prototype has been around for forever, but we're coming into an age where the prototype is your product, right? And you're just continuously iterating on your product and making it better. So I think that's super exciting. I think the other thing which has been touched on is how these tools are starting to get used together and layered on top of each other to do some really incredible things. I think one of the big questions is, well, how much can you really do with no code, right? Like at a certain point, you still need a code, and that might be true for certain things, but there are APIs and libraries and no code things for AI, for natural language processing, for computer vision. There's there's so many things that you can layer on top to do things you could never previously do without having a computer science degree, that this new focus on product, on business value, on all that is the most exciting thing for me.
Awesome. Yeah. You guys have pretty much touched on a lot of the topics. For me, it's really comes back to it always kind of comes back to entrepreneurship, which is kind of where I started, just building companies and then training founders as the head of an accelerator, and just getting frustrated seeing like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of founders basically taking the same route, where it's like, spending so much of their savings, like quitting their full-time job and basically like jumping into entrepreneurship, and like 2 years later don't have much to show for it. And it's devastating. And what it's doing for me that really makes me kind of like wake up every morning to fight this fight is basically that they're losing, like they believe that they can't do it. They believe that it's not for them if they fail a first time, And I think the power of these tools is like, hey, you can build and launch and iterate things and throw things against the wall. Eventually something will stick. And when it does, like that will change your life. And I think that like, I'm a big believer, and this is probably a whole other panel, but like that entrepreneurship is a learned skill. I do believe that certain personality types are better sort of geared towards risk-taking than others, but even risk-taking, it's something that you get used to as you do it. And I think that like for a lot of us in this panel, like we know that, and it's really freaking hard, people who dedicate themselves. So being able to lower the bar and to be like, hey, now it's not 0.3% of the world who can like actually launch companies, because every company is a software company, like Mark Horowitz always says, sorry, Mark Andreessen. It's like, yeah, we need to kind of like learn how to like use these tools. And we're frankly in like the world now where we're going from like doing individual tasks to like being the master of these tools. And with like artificial intelligence and automation coming, like there's going to be a brutal wake up soon. So we have a choice now. It's kind of like, do we upskill and do we like leverage these skills in our favor? Or do we just kind of let it pass by like I did with coding 30 years ago, and then realize like, oh man, I wish I had, taken that train at the right time. So that really like is the thing that for me gets me stoked. It's like, hey, this finally opens up to like a kid in Nicaragua who has an internet connection. This opens up to like, like someone who's like 60 years old and has built several businesses, but has felt kind of like they've been like pushed away because like technology has taken over and like they're not techies. And I think there is this kind of idea of like people like, I'm just not techie. And with no code, this is going to like just blend into everything. It's just like we're all going to be to a certain extent technical. We all already are, right? Everyone's probably using like internal tools like Doc was mentioning. I think that's going to be a huge thing as well. Like for those listening, when we talk about no code, there's basically two parts. There's like building the software, and then there's also automation. And so like, and both of them are really ideal to building businesses. So talking about that, maybe we should jump into kind of one topic that kind of fascinates me is this idea of like functionality versus ease of use. And since we have several platforms here, Like, how do you guys think about that exchange, right? It's like when you want to build super deep functionalities, there's just going to be a deeper learning curve. And then if you're doing simpler things, it's going to be much easier to bring to market. But like, I'd love to hear like kind of how you guys think of that, specifically sort of directed towards Adalo, Tapcart, and Bubble, and how I guess you see that taking place within. I guess everyone's trying to make the barrier to entry lower, but at the same time, it seems like, you know, I see companies like Bubble and Adalo where they're like, it's pretty clear that you guys are trying to go like the deepest you can, right? Like trying to get like functionalities that are like kind of breaking boundaries. So where does that balance lie within these companies? And I don't want to put you on the spot. I know that you may not be able to speak about everything, but Nick, maybe do you want to give us, you know, the way that you think about it at least?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, and it's a question that comes up often. So, I mean, first I'd say, you know, Bubble's kind of core principle is flexibility and freedom above everything. And so we really want to position ourselves as a visual programming language where you can do anything that you want to by stringing together all these things. So with that in mind, I think when this conversation comes up, when this topic comes up, the average user doesn't know what's really hard or what's really easy. They just have in their mind what they want to accomplish, right? What their goal is, a feature that they want to build, a business case that they want to test out. So I try not to think about it in terms of, oh, well, this is like advanced functionality, or this is getting really into the weeds. Try to think about it in more terms of, look, the end user is not going to know like what's technically hard for us to build, or what is like too complicated. So we try to treat everything kind of on the same playing field. And one of the ways to kind of make things that are very buried or deep easier to surface is all about context, right? So if someone is going down a certain path, then options open up as they go down that path, rather than just seeing everything at once and you get option paralysis. So that's been one area of focus, is how do you contextually provide or push the user in the right direction depending on what they're doing. So one example of that in Bubble is we typecast different things. So if someone wants to search for a list of products, they specify, I'm going to be talking about products, right? I'm focusing on products right now. And then I'm going to search for products. And then you can layer on a bunch of constraints and filters and sorting. But at the end, it has to kind of sum up to a list of products. And if it doesn't, if you made an error along the way, then it'll tell you and you can kind of correct it as you go. So you can end up building what would be a very, very complex, you know, SQL query for those who are technical in just kind of plain English, kind of getting guided along the way. And with those checks in place, it's like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't that hard, right? Like, okay, that makes sense. So I think that's one of the things that we really try to focus on is remembering that at the end of the day, the user is not going to know and shouldn't have to care whether this is complicated or not. It should be something that they're able to access regardless.
Love it. And I'd love to hear from Adalo as well, because I know that you have recently sort of, released the components marketplace. You're doing a lot of kind of deeper work to get access to some of those deeper functionalities. How do you look at this? Is it kind of similar to what Nick was mentioning?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities. And, you know, I was having a conversation with one of our co-founders the other day so because I'm in education and I'm going to be teaching how to use the platform, what is our approach going to be? And my background is in product and software engineering. And so I immediately, when I start like thinking about building, I immediately start thinking about the database, right? Like, how are we going to structure all of this? Because then I'm going to put a UI on top of it. Well, with typically, you know, we call them makers, but people who come to our platform, if they don't have a background, databases are actually like a scary thing for them. They're really unsure of what it is, how to structure it. So we are kind of taking a different approach of saying, like, how can we marry concepts of what we're teaching to things they already know? So they understand what a UI is because they're interacting with it constantly. So we're taking that approach, and we've talked with some people, and I've tried this out on some different opportunities that I've had for teaching, and it's worked really well. And I think that there is probably a constraint, with like how complicated do you want to make the platform versus how easy is it going to be to use? And I think that at some point you have to realize there's a learning curve for everything. It's going to require someone to dig in and learn. But the point is how quickly can we get them from A to Z and on their way, so that they're not investing so much time learning and realizing, oh, this isn't actually going to work for us. But I'm not in product, so I don't know what their constraints are. But I do know from an education standpoint, like it's very important that it is simple to use and intuitive. And I definitely think that we've hit the nail on the head with that.
Awesome. I would agree. Tara?
Yeah, I was just going to share that we spend a lot of time thinking about this as an education company because we work with a lot of the platforms that you guys are building here too. One of the things that we've done that's really made a difference, because a lot of the folks that we work with feel sometimes overwhelmed by like the amount of flexibility that they can have. And also I often will notice that like when you have a lot of flexibility, you end up thinking about a bunch of new things that were completely not part of the original app scope at all. And like really like no customer is going to pay any more money for them. That's usually like my question that I ask people, like, how much more money are your customers going to give you if you add this feature? And if it's like not that much, then like, let's put that on the to-do list for later. But one of the things that we've done is we've built our own sort of platforms that sort of are not directly connected to, but are help with the existing tools that are out there, because we believe really strongly that like app building should be conversational, that you should ultimately be able to text a phone number, it asks you questions, and it builds the app for you. And so what we do at Apps Without Code is we have a series of questions that we ask. And as we built this out, the question logic has gotten more and more complex and robust, but really it asks you questions and it prototypes and puts together your app and gives you instructions of what to do next based on the answers to those questions. And we find that that kind of experience works really well for beginners, where like who have like no idea what a good login screen looks like you don't even know where to begin and where to start. And what you build is just like, oh wait, no, that's not quite how logins even work, right? So to overcome some of that and to overcome some of the things, Christian, you were talking about around like functionality versus ease of use and that balance, there's a lot of decisions that we find that a lot of tools out there that you can make. But some people have absolutely no interest in making those decisions or like even learning how the database should get structured. They just want it to be structured. And so we found that like some conversational experiences make a big difference there. And so that's really what we're playing around with at Apps Without Code.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I mean, we're also sort of an institute for non-technical people. So we also run a program, and we've also found that like absolutely like one thing is like product. The other thing is everything else that makes a successful business. And so that's what attracted me to no-code, was specifically that like, hey, when you launch something, it doesn't have to be a complex build to test the market. And then after that, yeah, getting really close to customers so that they'll literally dictate to you what it is that they want and are willing to pay for. And that's where like, we also really like have an emphasis on like, how can we break down and teach enough of a certain platform that's going to be interesting for them. But I also loved what Lacey said in terms of like, you break down the concepts but connect them to things that they understand, right? Like if you talk about like middleware and logic, kind of like Excel, like people do use Excel, they know how to do like, if I do this, then I want, if I hover over this button, I want it to, I get that, like they understand the mechanics, but you have to connect it to specific points that they can leech on. Sorry, I'm not at all American. Sorry, guys. So, but no, I think that's ultimately very interesting. Sina, I'd love to hear your thoughts here, because you guys have like really focused in on like ease of use, right? Like that essentially is like a huge focus for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the constant battle when it comes to building stuff like this. You have customers who always want certain features, certain customizations, and that really comes with the territory. So our approach is really the approach that Apple and many other software companies use. 1,000 no's for every yes. Maybe for us, it's like 5 no's for every yes, but it's a constant battle with our sales team, customer support team, with our customers, et cetera. How do we keep them happy, but how do we not spend too much time veering into certain customizations they want, certain one-off features that might not be platform-wide? And we really look at it, as I mentioned, Apple does this very well. Shopify does this very well. Shopify, to be super honest, like there's a lot of features and functionalities that other e-commerce platforms have that they simply don't have. And the way I look at it is that's one of the reasons that Shopify is the premier e-commerce platform right now. They focus on ease of use, functionality, and not bogging you down with certain features and functionality that the masses aren't going to use. So I'm sure Shopify is very much 1,000 no's for every yes. So is Apple. And I think we'll eventually get big enough so we can do that too.
Love it. The next Apple. Yeah, I mean, this is always something that I'm thinking about as well. And because, for us, we teach several platforms like Tara was mentioning, like that's our responsibility as educators. It's like really to be like, hey, like there's going to be a different platform that's better suited based on who you are, the stage in the company that you're at, the functionalities you're looking to build. But with that, I would love, because Doc is going to bring us through a couple of awesome builds, I'd love for him to tell us, how he approaches what platforms or what no-code stack he uses. Like, what's the approach? Do you have just an approach, or are they questions, kind of like Tara was mentioning?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture. I think it's a mixture of questions. And the approach I have, I heard it years ago. It was see the handle, not the tool. And they were talking about what are you trying to do? Or if you know that you're trying to hammer this nail in, you already know what you're going to need to do. I don't need to tell someone how to use a katana, how to use this. No. There's a nail, go get a hammer. So when I'm talking about what tool to use, tons of times people will be like, listen, Bubble can do everything. Let's use Bubble. I'm like, okay, great. I love it. We can do this. But wait a minute, what are you trying to accomplish? Let's talk about those things and then expand from there. Lacey was talking about first of all, I think the best onboarding platform to teach databases, I think actually is Adalo, with how it teaches relational databases and the walkthrough and everything. But sometimes we had a pushback with a student because they were like, what kind of database? And they were trying to have this whole conversation. I was like, why don't we just use AppSheet? Because it actually builds your database for you, the relationship database for you. But that was for that specific client case, right? So I really just think the tech stack, the best one, and I saw it in the comments, Denise was asking about Wix, is Wix great? I'm like, Wix might be great for you. I'm never about this one is better than the other. What do you want to accomplish? How fast do you want to move? And how much money do you want to make, and where do you want to expand? And let's work from there. Because tons of times I had someone in the comments, they're like, I'm going to learn Bubble. I'm going to do this. I was like, have you ever picked up? They're like, I need this done in about 3 hours, the whole thing done. I've never used Bubble before. I was like, well, there might be some heavy drinking going on after that. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to do that, but good health to you. I mean, so it kind of just depends of I don't even try to expose all of them because there's so many platforms. What do you want to get done? Where do you want to go? And let's start there. So it's, that way.
Love it. Yeah. And every use case is going to kind of require a different stack. And as you mentioned, I don't know who mentioned this. Someone mentioned sometimes they just work beautifully together, right? I've seen people build really beautiful front ends on Webflow for the whole customer acquisition side of things. And I'm a huge fan of Webflow as well. And then they might build the app in Adalo. They might build it in Bubble. They might and so it's really interesting to see that even now we're combining these tools, and the tools themselves are developing. Even Webflow is kind of talking about membership, which up till now it's been basically member stack, and I love member stack. Those guys are awesome. And I think that it's just so exciting to see that there's for the end user, it's they want to learn several tools, but again, like as you mentioned, depending on what they're looking to actually accomplish, like there's going to be a different best approach. And for me, the thing I always focus on is that when it comes to building companies, it's like testing, validating, iterating, and understanding the feature set that you need, the people are willing to pay for. And you can do tests, very simple tests, to be able to do that. So I'm a huge ambassador of teaching people entrepreneurship. No code just happens to be the smartest way to build things early on, because it's easy to iterate, it's quicker to learn, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, I fully agree on that point for sure. Tara, what's your take here?
Just on the easiest way. Can you repeat your question?
No, I think we're just having a conversation around like this idea of like, I don't know, it's like it sounds like it's like each tool has its own like areas that they're useful for. Like sometimes you can combine some of these tools, sometimes you can like build only with one tool. Like how do you guide people?
Yeah. So we've had a couple different variations of how we taught. When we first launched, we exclusively taught Bubble. And also, like when we first launched, there were not many no-code tools that were out there. I still really love Bubble. It's just not the tool that we teach to beginners who are just starting, who have no interest in really being the one who's always doing the app building. They want to get the app running so they can probably go working on being CEO, doing marketing, doing other things. So that was sort of the first iteration of how we trained. The second one, we used a bunch of different tools and taught really, like, I think about no code and the types of tools in a couple different categories. One category are these like one-stop shop tools where it's intended that you build the entire interface in one platform. And you can build just about like any kind of platform. It gives you a blank canvas and you can paint, right? Another kind of tool that I often think about are these like vertical specific tools where they do like one type of thing really well. I think Tapcart's a really good example of that, where like they're focused on a particular kind of category of use cases and they're going to crush it there. Mighty Networks is an example of that, where like they do social networks really well. ShareTribe is an example of that, where they do like marketplaces really well. So I think about like generalist platforms and then like specific platforms. So we have also had an iteration of our program where we've taught specific programs. So based on, you answered questions. I really like conversational, like question and answer experiences. So you answered questions and we recommended for you what tool to use based on what feature sets you needed. But we focused and specialized on like specific, vertical specific tools was our second iteration. The third iteration that we're on now, that we teach now, is we primarily actually teach a tool called Glide. There's sort of a nice combination between like ease of use and functionality that we find fits our students really well. So we primarily teach using a platform called Glide. I also love, though, Adalo. I also use Bubble myself. And so those are other platforms that, like, if Glide's not a good fit for, we send other people to. So that's sort of how we teach now. And really, it just has to do with like us experimenting with different platforms and figuring out what the easiest one is for functionality that our customers need.
Very cool. And we love your dog in the background, so don't worry. I love how you quickly like try to mute it. It's like, we want to hear the dog. Let the dog be part of the panel too.
I know he wants to be.
No, very cool. So yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of like done a bit the rounds here. Are there some things that you think like we haven't mentioned at all that might be worth talking about? And I remember, like, anyone right now, let's do a free for all. Let's just have an open like discussion about no code.
Can I just say one thing? The comments section. Are you reading some of the comments? I'm obsessed with this, and I was trying to comment back. I'm on my phone commenting to people, but I can't comment in the chat. Did you get them? Okay, I was like,
I'm reading them.
I didn't say anything, but I was like, I gotta answer this question, but I won't say anything right now.
No. Now you got us started here. We're gonna take questions, right? Laurel, let's do some questions.
Which question were you speaking of, Doc?
I had to. Denise asked about the SEO question, and I was like, okay, we gotta talk about this.
This Denise question?
Yes, yeah. Talking about concerning if there's limitations with SEO and everything. I know it's a slight detour, but I just wanted to answer that real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
So, talking about SEO, I just want to make sure that. Denise, were you asking about specifics of like SEO is such a buzzword, and just having the fundamentals down can be more than enough for most of the case with your SEO. So if you're looking at your headlines, you're naming your picture, you're looking at something called H tags. So if you're looking at your H1, 2, and 3 tags, and then you're making a really good piece of content that is shareable, people want to consume, people are on the page for a long period of time, for the most part, you're going to be fine. Now, there's tons of people that will be like, okay, you need this plugin to optimize and do all these things. But the reality is, if you just do the fundamentals, you don't take the picture and it's like a screenshot and you upload it and the name is screenshot whatever, just name it. That's something relevant. You do the alt tag, you do text, you do the basics, you're going to be really good. From there, if you're deciding what platform, there's a whole other layer to how you do that if you're trying to scale it. But yeah, I just had to say that. That's all.
No, I love that. And I mean, for SEO, you're right. There's so many different things that you can do. And when it kind of comes down to it, like one of the platforms that I really like for SEO actually is Webflow, in terms of like the tagging, in terms of like even dynamic pages and like the way that you can leverage those. Like it's really powerful stuff. Was there another question that you found interesting?
So does anyone else have anything to add to the SEO question?
I would add a maybe controversial opinion to the SEO question, which is that if you are starting a business, if you're starting something new, probably worrying about SEO in your first few months is not a really good use of your time. The reality is that in your first few months of launching a business, you have to go grab the customer and bring them to you. They're likely not going to find you in a search. They're likely not going to beat your competitor or some other people with other keywords that they might be searching for. So like playing that in terms of like allocating your precious time resources, because it's probably you, a small team, like there are other places where you can much better, like going to post in some Facebook groups where you think your customers might be would be way higher ROI for you than optimizing for your SEO in your first few months if you're launching something new. So like that is something to think about. I usually move people away from SEO conversations in the beginning, just because if we only have a small period of time to get you customers, get you traction, we can use it for something else.
100% agree on that point. I think that a lot of people are like, and even in no code, let's talk about this. Let's talk about some of the limitations, because I think that people are like, oh, maybe one day, you know, like I can't scale this to 100 million people. So it's like, so I shouldn't build in this. And it's like, well, wait, let's have a conversation around that, because most platforms rebuild everything when they have to scale up anyway, like be it code or no code or whatever. So it's like, I think there's also like this kind of like, it's probably comes down to like analysis paralysis, where like you're just kind of scared to get started. And so instead of getting started and like leveraging these tools, and you're worried about everything down the road, like SEO, or like what happens when I have 100 million users, or like, you know, like will I have to change platforms, or can I extract my code? But I think that there's a real conversation around this to be had, because like there's probably, we all get the same 10 kind of like questions. What's the best remedy there? Is it really just about keeping people focused on the right goals? That's what we focus on at WeAreNoCode, is like basically like, what's your goal, right? And what stage are you at? Like if let's say if you have already existing clients, or let's say you have already 100,000 clients and you're trying to build out, okay, then you can start thinking of these more complex things. But like, I love what Tara said about this conversational side. It's like, we need to like talk about these tools and building from the perspective of what people's goals actually are. It's like, hey, like, you know, we could build everything, but everything is going to be a huge waste of your time most of the time. So yeah, I think this is, so that brings us to the question: what are some limitations that we see in no code? Because I think the more that we're honest about these limitations, the more that we're like, that people build trust around no code. And I think like, yeah, we see like crazy developers now coming in, and like, I mean, it's super exciting right now. What are?
I will hop. I'm like keep muting and unmuting, so like I have so many thoughts around this. So before I came onto Adalo, I used to build out products for startups, and we would sit down, talk about what they want to build out, write down all their requirements, and then I would look at them and be like, okay, we need to take this back by like half, if not 75%. Because this doesn't matter. This is not going to validate your product. All these bells and whistles that you have on here, they're nice to haves, but they're not going to have someone pay you money, like Tara was saying earlier. And I see that a lot. And I think it's hard because like they're not coming from product backgrounds. They're not coming from all this stuff. They're just like thinking, okay, like I see what, you know, Facebook or Instagram looks like, and I've got to do that. And it's like what you need to understand, especially getting into software, is that we have versions and it's constantly iterating on itself and getting better. And that in the beginning, your product is probably going to be ugly and suck. That's just the first wave. Everybody goes through it. Like, it's not like you're going to skip those steps, but those steps are valuable to you because you're going to get feedback from your customers, from your users, and then you're going to start that iteration process. One thing that has come up a lot for when I was doing some consulting and training work last year was, what about like HIPAA compliance? What about like, we want to use these tools, but like our IT team is saying it has to have X, you know, YZ for security and all of that. So I definitely think that there's room to grow there, but I also think like we're not really in the beginning of using no code, but for the sake of the movement, you know, we're really in the beginning. And so this is really going to change, and these tools will grow with it. I think they just need some time to get there.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Tara.
I was just going to say, Lacey, I like what you were saying around like your first product and how it's likely in a sec. There's a quote by, I think it's Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, who says, like, if you're not embarrassed of the first version of your product, then you launch too late. Like, that's one of my favorite ones. Like, you're way too late if you're not embarrassed of this. You got to launch one that's kind of embarrassing to get it out there. Just to quickly add thoughts on limitations, the top 4 things that I get asked about that are harder to do or not possible to do is one would be like things around cryptocurrency, just like tricky, not quite there. I get asked about that a lot. Virtual reality, not augmented reality, which is different, but virtual. There are tools like Spark AR from Facebook for augmented reality. Virtual reality gets a little tricky. Emoji apps, like, you know, those apps where like it gives you your own set of emojis and a keyboard. That one, not so much. And then depending on the tool, HIPAA compliance. I don't see a lot of tools that are really, like Lacey was mentioning about HIPAA compliance, spending a lot of time on HIPAA. It's tricky, so I get why they're not. But that's a 4th one where like you can do, but depending. So those are like the top 4 areas that I get questions about that are still like, ooh, kind of hard. And by the way, I will end that by saying that every time I give my list of things that are hard to do or can't do without code, someone launches a new tool that makes that possible. So like my lists don't age well. And so if you're watching this after a period of time, go look that up because things may have changed.
Totally. Doc, I feel like you were onto something here. Or was that?
Oh, well, yeah, but I've been talking too much. I'll answer it. I'll talk in a second. I'm sorry.
There's one thing I'll
come back
add.
to me later.
Yeah, there's one thing I'll add that I would not get caught up too much in long-term ramifications. These are good problems to have, I guess, in the long run. And the way I look at it is you've got some of the biggest brands in the world with all their technical debt and with everything that have just come to terms with the fact that it's just not worth it. And they're moving to Shopify. You've got Steve Madden on Shopify. You've got Fashion Nova on Shopify. These companies can easily afford their own in-house development teams. It's not about that. Shopify can build their own custom e-commerce website, but there's a reason that they're on the Shopify platform. They can build. Fashion Nova is our biggest customer. They're the biggest Shopify brand out there from what I know. And they could easily build their own custom mobile app, but there's a reason they don't, because they have better use of their resources in their opinion. So these are all things that, you know, if Fashion Nova is not doing it with their size and scale, it's not something that you or I should be worried about.
Doc.
Yes. 2 things. I saw something in the comment. First of all, interoperability, I had to look up and I was like, am I understanding what this person is asking me? So that's number 1. Adam, I got you in a second. Number 2, I was going to say is a lot of times people ask like the boundaries, and kind of like Lacey was saying, like back up. What is that one thing are we trying to solve? Like, usually people are asking, like, I need to know what's happening with like the database if I'm offline. I need to know about this. I'm like, well, hold on. Like, do you even have a customer yet? Like, have we even got a landing page? Like, does anyone want this? So afterwards, let's talk about all those other features. And so usually we, with people asking, we'll say like, what would you like to do? Let's go back. And then I use the Wayback Machine a lot of times, or I'll go back and look at the first iteration of some of the things they're trying to be. And I'm like, okay, so look at what they were like 7 years ago. Okay. And look how they expanded with what people are doing. And then it allows us to iterate on, okay, this is feature one, your main feature, and we need to now have validation from your paying audience that we're going to add other features along the way. When Tara was talking about like HIPAA, I was thinking about sometimes we work with healthcare companies, and then automatically there's like two, but they started as a private like company that worked in the healthcare space, and then they went into no code. So there's sometimes very specific things like that, but again, it comes back down to those features and everything, because I think it's so easy to want so many other things. Listen, when you're making money and you have a runway, then we can decide to bring on that team and solve that problem. But like right now, like, no, ain't nobody got time for that. But there is that one question. I wasn't going to bring it up, but there is a question that Adam brought up. Yes, thank you so much. And I didn't want to read it off or anything, but I do have a comment on this. That's all.
Love it. So yeah, I mean, also like another thing, we have John that says all code is temporary, no big deal. Yeah, it's kind of funny because if we really take like a couple steps back, it's like back in the day, we literally had punch cards because computers understand ones and zeros only. So we'd have punch cards of massive computers. Then we're like, okay, we're going to stop filling up these closets with punch cards. So they're like, let's create a language. And that's where like all coding languages came up. And now what we're saying with like no code is basically like, hey, you can actually like build with these pre-built modules basically of, so it's basically visual programming, drag and drop functionalities, logic in plain English instead of making it super complicated. And I think like we're going to continue to do that. Like we're already seeing people on Twitter, like basically being able to code via voice control. So there's like, I don't know, I feel like this is going to continue to go in a direction where we are just allowing more and more people to be able to leverage these skills because they're becoming increasingly important, right? And for me, that's the most important thing in the end of the day. It's just saying like, hey, like there's, we're basically improving the experience, and now we're allowing more people to create digital experiences. And the reason why that's important is because right now, and let's be honest, like it's literally like a tiny crew of people, mostly in California, mostly white men, who are building these experiences. So what happens when you put these into the hands of people who are from totally different cultures, from completely different backgrounds, races, religion, everything? Like that's what I'm excited about. It's like I think there's going to be a fundamental shift, and the more we're able to abstract from that code layer, the more and more people are going to be able to kind of come in. So I'm a huge fan of like what all of you here are doing in terms of like platforms, but also in terms of like approaches. I think that like in some cases, like, yeah, like ease of use is the most important. In other cases, you need someone who's going to push the boundaries, right? You need people who are showing that, hey, look, now you can actually build AI algorithms with no code. It's insane. And you can bring them into the stack. And to answer the API question that's in there, like a real world example, API is very broad term, and it basically refers to connecting with other information. So it's kind of like for example, I need to have the weather, right? The weather's constantly changing, and that needs to be it has to dynamically change, which means that it has to change when the weather guys makes it change, right? You have to be able to show that. And so all that an API is like, I'm gonna ask what the weather's like to this, weather app, and then you bring it back into, and anytime that's updated, that call is happening quickly. So that's how you're able to do that connection and have real-time dynamic sort of updated information. For example, stock market information. You don't want yesterday's stock market information. You might lose a lot of money. And so that's what the concept of an API is. It's basically connecting, but it's a very broad term in terms of what can be done with it. It can be bringing in a machine learning algorithm. It can be just getting the weather. So
I often explain APIs by like acting it out. This is like my favorite form of teaching too. So it's a conversation between two pieces of software. So like one piece of software goes, hey, I got a new sign up. And the other one goes, got it, thanks. And that's what's happening back and forth. Hey, the weather changed. Got it, thanks. Hey, someone wants a transcription. Got it, transcribed. So there's just this conversation happening between two different softwares. And that goes to your second part of your question about like for your specific interpretation services. That's an example.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to say this Adam question. I'm gonna wrap this thing up real quick. Okay, so if we're talking about the interoperability, I jack that up. But if we're talking about how it all works and everything like that in the systems and not duplicating the same work repeatedly, I would really go into the workflow of what you're trying to accomplish and then scaling it out from there, right? Because so if I'm worried about long-term, there's so many different trends and it could go this way and that. But if I understand the outcome and the workflow of what I'm trying to accomplish, then I can make sure that no matter if I move over to a different system or I have a different thing, I can now be able to move quickly when I'm using that other platform. That's how I'm seeing it that way. Because looking at long-term, I feel like that might be a game where I get caught up really quick because now I'm trying to bet on which one's going to go long term or this platform's going to be, taking off in the other one. But if I have my workflows down and I understand the mechanics of what I need to do, I can take that same procedure and then bring it over there. Like I think about Bubble and how logical. Once you understand the logic of Bubble, now I can scale a lot quicker there. But those fundamentals, if someone's in programming or something like that, they can use that same skill and now build a lot quicker on Bubble if they have certain, workflows and mechanics or understanding. So that's all I had to say. That's all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel like this question is kind of what the no-code movement is all about. And so much of it is born out of why are we reinventing the wheel? Like, I think Tapcart is an incredible example of why do I need to build a mobile app when I really want to be selling stuff? Like, I want to be selling stuff. Why do I need to be building an app? And it's the same thing with, if you want to be building a tech business, there's so much more to it than just the code that you have to write. And so I think the beautiful thing about no code is that, hey, let's forget about reinventing the wheel every time. And let's create value by linking together these things that have already been built that don't need to be built again, right? Like how many sign-up systems need to be built when it's just like every site has a login? Okta just bought Auth0 for $6.5 billion because people are sick of reinventing sign-up, right? So some of the things that no-code tools do so well is abstracting all that stuff away. And like every panelist here has been talking about, what do you want to do? What do you want to build, right? Okay, cool. You want to achieve this goal. Here are the different things you can string together from this platform, from that platform to make that happen. And so if that's where Adam is driving at, I think no code is the solution, right? To not having to constantly reinvent the wheel and then focus on solutions instead.
I 100% agree. I think that it's like, wow, think of how we're using the very limited, super smart tech talent in the world right now. 75% of them are building all the same things at different companies. And it's like, that probably should be changed, right? And I think that the way I see no code is kind of like you get to leverage the power of giants alone. It's like you get to leverage all these amazing things that have been created before you. And when we talk back to the API things, I'm a huge fan of buy before build, specifically in entrepreneurship. You want to test things out as quickly as possible. The customer is interested in the value you're providing. And so the quicker you can deliver the value, that's really the place where you're going to be able to, essentially build a business. But if you were to spend your entire, 6 months and all your savings towards building something out yourself before testing that thing is actually useful, you're going to be wasting a bunch of money. So, and if you essentially build something out, if you buy it first and then, you then realize there's demand, then it's great. Now what's the, how much do you have to pay for that? It doesn't make sense to now build it. That's the thing people don't realize. Every stage is going to be totally different in terms of the way you approach product, in terms of the way that you basically approach customers. But when it comes down to it, there's a huge overarching problem here. There was a study in 2016 showing like 90% of the apps in the App Store are dead zombie apps. And that just points to a bigger problem. There's this idea of like build and they will come. And it's like, I think who was it? It was Steve Blank, who's one of the founders of like startup methodology pretty much. And he basically says like, that's a prayer. That's not a strategy, that's a prayer. And so I think that like, we just need to start educating people towards achieving their goals through no code instead of just nerding out on features and functionalities, right? If the ambition is to like automate things internally, to be able to have one person be able to do a lot more, then that's a really great goal. Like building, like internal tools like Doc was talking about earlier. Like I think this is going to be a huge evolution because for people who are like at an early stage, they can build out massive companies pretty much with like 1 or 2 people. And then also like companies that already have so many different people, a lot of these tools are so simple to teach. It's just like, it makes so much sense for these people to invest in upskilling their workers. By the way, Lacey, we love your daughter. Everyone loves your daughter here. I saw everyone laughing when like she came in and it was just like, oh no, how's it going?
You want to say hello? Hello.
Do you like no code?
I really like Lauren's question in the chat about how you talk with investors who insist that you have a technical founder when you have built a revenue generating business with no code solutions already versus invest in the traction that you've made. Yeah. So you're saying you already have a revenue generating business. You've built it with no code. So I can speak to this. So I run multiple businesses, the largest of which is a $5 million a year business. We've raised 0 investor capital and are completely bootstrapped. And I started off open to working with investors. When we started, like no code definitely was not a thing. And so there's even less openness to it than there was when we started. My general approach has been that like I refuse to shape my business around what investors want. If they'd like to shape the business and they can launch their own, this is my vision and what I'm looking to build. So that either means that A, it's not the right investor for you, or you might want to really be thinking about how you can run this business actually without having to worry about investors at all. What that takes is a certain kind of business model. It means that certain business models are completely off the table for you. If you want to charge like a $10 a month price point, it probably means that like you will not likely be able to bootstrap in the way that you want to. So there's trade-offs. But I highly recommend that you consider like not continuing to spend time and energy on raising money if you are already generating revenue with your business, and to consider that either finding investors that are aligned with you or like not spending time with that. There is 2 things I would look at. One, there's a book called Profit First by a guy named Mike Michalowicz, which I really highly recommend, around how to structure your business so that it funds itself with its profit. So for example, for us at the end of the year, we have profit and we use it to buy other companies and to scale and like that and to invest in other things internally. And like, that's a model that like we had to work really hard to set up, but it is one that we really love. And we get to make our own decisions about what we do and how we strategically grow. So I would definitely check out that book. And then also I would consider other non-dilutive financing options, right? Like, and in general, like with no code and with the culture that comes with no code, like your job is to like dodge limitations, right? Like get around the limitation. And so if you're finding that the investor piece is a limitation in terms of what they culturally expect you to have, like it's just like a cultural expectation that you have a technical founder. I would also look at non-dilutive financing. Like for us, we took it, since we were already generating revenue, we took out debt and paid it back within the year. Then the next year we took out some more debt and paid it back within the year. And like that worked really well for us. I feel like we don't talk about that often, but that also is an option for you. I particularly went to Fundera startupstarter.com, and they did a really great job finding a bunch of different options for us as a small business because we had revenue to show. So that might be a place and an option to check out. And then also consider there are some like equity crowdfunding options that are more and more available now today. They just raised the limit on how much you can raise by just like going to your audience and your crowd and your customers. But in general, I would encourage you to see if you can build this business, particularly if you already have revenue around your customers and have your customers essentially be your investors, if that's an option for you.
I love that. You're preaching to the choir here for sure, because like one of the big things that I'm getting frustrated with is this over glorification of raising massive rounds of investment. And also the lack of understanding that most founders have when it comes to what it means to actually have investors. And having raised capital for several companies before, it's like people don't really understand that, you know, this idea of freedom, this idea of be your own boss, work on your own time, that does not happen when you take in certain types of capital. Specifically, you know, and I'm not at all a hater. Like I'm very friendly with, you know, a lot of VCs, and like I'm definitely not saying that like it's just that like most companies are not made for VC funding, full stop. And when we stop the conversation around like, hey, everyone needs to raise VC funds that essentially make someone with like a pretty cool idea that could become like a $10 million a year business that, by the way, VCs are not at all interested in, then it's like, okay, there's a problem here in the understanding, and it's like, I think VC will continue to pave the way in you know, for certain startups 100%. But as you were mentioning, Tara, we need to open up this conversation to like, there are so many alternative mechanisms for funding. There's indie VC is a great example of like an alternative to the VC model. They're kind of like, I want to write your last check. I don't want to write like a check between 1,000 other checks, you know, and then they just have a different thirst for risk, right? And that's what it really is. And I think that we need to start educating people around this topic, because if not, they're spending the first 6 months of building their startup raising capital. And guess what? No investor, no institutional investor is interested in your startup until you have 3 to 6 months of traction, full stop. And that's where the narrative has to change.
Yeah, something I'd like to add. And first, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Lauren. She's a friend of mine from high school, and Palisades High School in the house. Go Dolphins, the mean streets at Pacific Palisades. But she's awesome. And I think having been through 4 fundraising rounds with Tapcart, I've personally seen all of the dilution. I see all the pros. I see all the cons. Do I regret raising money? I absolutely don't, because it helped us get to where we need to go. But maybe we could have explored other options. I know ClearBank is a great example of one. If you're in e-commerce, they will lend you money just based on your metrics. So you connect your bank account, you connect your Stripe, whatever you're using to process payments, and they have an algorithm, and they'll just send you money up to 10,000 up to 10 million, let's say. So there's a lot of options out there, and they don't take equity. So VCs, as you said, Christian, are not for everyone. We're trying to build a multi-billion-dollar company, so maybe it is for us, but definitely not needed for most companies out there, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that raising capital is just another tool in your toolbox as an entrepreneur, right? It's just another thing you have at your disposal. You can use it when it's appropriate, and you don't have to, right? You know, Bubble was bootstrapped, I think, for 5, 6, maybe even 7 years before our founders took on the first round of investment. And it was in the beginning, we're focused on this mission and we're focused on one thing. And then at a certain point you know, the goals shifted to we need to grow fast. And so it was a tool in our toolkit. And I think it's an important thing as a former founder myself. We learned a lot from trying to raise capital, and then realized that there were other things that we needed to focus on that were better for our business. And it was when we had stopped focusing on raising capital and focused on our users and product that we saw things start to happen. So not to say that, right, raising capital is bad, VC is bad, but it's a tool in your toolbox. So investors, some are very smart and have seen a lot of things go right and a lot of things go wrong. There's a lot to learn from that, but you can arguably learn way more from your customers. So the fact that, Lauren, you have a revenue generating business, I think tells you everything you need to know. How can you get that revenue to scale faster, right?
Absolutely. And that's the power of this, right? It's really about saying like, hey, like we have to stop polarizing thing. I think the polarization, where, like no code, there's like kind of this like weird thing going on. It's like same thing with like investor, VC, bootstrap, and it's like let's just bring it all down and be like, hey, there's just better circumstances for your specific case. And I'm a huge endorser of bootstrapping because you pretty much have to bootstrap, at the beginning of most companies. But then there's also a point at which, as sort of Sina mentioned, like, it makes sense for certain companies. And again, like, I think the problem might come in like this idea of like, if you ask someone, hey, do you want to build like a $10 million business or do you want to build $1 billion business? Most people will be like, oh, I want to build $1 billion business. And it's like, okay, and there's all these implications that come with that too that people don't necessarily understand. So I think maybe we'll have to, we'll have to educate people. That's like our mission now, right? Is all to really like help people like understand these different things, whether it be like the concept of a technical like idea, break it down like a database, or whether it's like fundraising. It's like people just need to have a better, well-rounded understanding, because as founders, like you just have to be well-rounded, and you can always like, you can be a specialist once you can find specialists who are better than you in pretty much every area of your business. That's one thing I've learned. And so learning when to do it yourself and when to get someone else to step in, and that's usually a question of money and phase of company as well. So I feel like we've talked about a bunch of stuff, but now I would love to have someone in the audience or someone on the panel choose a topic and let's go. Oh, no takers, I see.
I just wanted to maybe quickly talk about app clips. It's a new feature in iOS 14. It's, in my opinion, it's going to be the biggest feature in iOS 14. Everyone knows about the widgets. Everyone knows about the app library. All of that stuff is very Instagrammable and Pinterestable and all that stuff, but not many people know about app clips. What app clips are is streaming mobile apps. So you can actually start to use a native mobile app without even having to go to the App Store first. It's going to be a game changer. Since we started Tapcart, we knew that this was going to have to change one day. The whole concept of having to just to use an app once, having to go to the App Store, log into your Apple ID, install an app permanently on your phone. It's a lot of friction. And ultimately, we felt like streaming native mobile apps would have to happen soon. Google launched their own version of this called Instant Apps about 2 years ago. Hasn't picked up a ton of steam, primarily because Apple hasn't been on board with the concept up until a few months ago when they launched it. So you haven't heard of it maybe because developers have to create their own individual app clips. You can imagine an app clip as being like a slice of a full app meant to be a specific experience. So if you have if you're a coffee shop and you have an app with all your store locators and all these merchandise and all that, your app clip may be just buy a coffee from this particular location. So it's going to be huge. And I think I'm bringing it up because I want to increase awareness about it and education, but it's also a good example of building for the future. We built Tapcart because we're bullish on mobile apps, and we knew that, okay, the whole process right now of all the friction to use an app and all that stuff, there's a lot of friction there, but we eventually felt like that had to change. So we're kind of building for the future in a sense. So hopefully that's a good example or lesson in, not skating to where the puck is, but skating to where the puck is going to be. It's a very famous Wayne Gretzky quote.
I love it. And you bring us to the final question of this panel, because we are reaching the end, which is basically, where do you see this industry going? And also, what impact do you want to have within this industry? And I think that we can all maybe just take a couple seconds to answer that individually, and then wrap up maybe, and yeah, call it a day. But it's just the first day of the week, the no code week. So there's a lot of exciting stuff coming. You'll see our faces probably more than you'd like to in the coming days. And yeah, super exciting. So let's start off maybe any volunteers, because I don't want to throw anyone under the gun here, since this is a question that I did not tell you guys about.
I think the future is making this stuff as easy as possible. So WordPress kind of started it, in my opinion, and there's a reason WordPress is really popular. And then, but because of WordPress's popularity, does that mean that other CMSs couldn't create themselves, and there was only going to be one CMS for every use case? Obviously not. So There's now Squarespace, there's now Shopify even has pages, things like that. So there's a lot of easy ways now to get a website off the ground really easily. And there's a ton of these different services depending on the niche that you're in. So it's just an example of seeing that somebody's out there doesn't mean that you shouldn't build a particular product just because you have a competitor who might be dominant in the space at that time. What you can do is focus on getting a larger piece of a smaller pie and focusing on a particular niche. But in my opinion, no code is the future because for all the reasons we talked about and the fact that it allows you to get the proof of concept out a lot faster than, and with a lot more fewer resources than you would normally need.
Love it. What do you think, Lacey? Are you ready with yours? A little 30 seconds of where you see this going in the next 5 years. And from the way you're biting your thumb, I'll maybe ask someone else first.
I'm fine. It's funny. I actually put in the chat. I was like, I don't think I can do this one because my child was screaming so loudly. But thankfully she's not right now. It's so where I think we're going in the next little bit. Actually, this isn't going to work. I'm sorry. Someone else is going to need to go.
All good. All good. We'll get to you afterwards if it's possible. Doc.
So I think it is going to go with, you will now see people be able to create their own micro SaaS a lot easier. I think unbundling so many different communities or unbundling like Reddit and Facebook groups and all these platforms and really being able to serve your specific niche or people will be so much easier and so much more impactful. And I also think you mentioned it a little bit before, ones in developing lands or all over the world, now they can serve their community and bring whatever they need to their community. Just an example, someone contacted me, they saw a tutorial, and now they're bringing Amber Alerts to their community in their country because they were talking about, I never even thought about this. They're like, Amber Alerts is not a thing in my country. That's what I'm building out. And I hadn't even thought about that. So I think all of these fundamental, either it's going to be changing someone's community or changing someone's life just by using internal apps. It's going to be crazy for the next 5 to 10 years and beyond. So I can't wait to see it.
Nick.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next Airbnb or the next Bumble or the next Uber to be built using entirely no-code tools. I think that really excites me because it'll show just the sheer power that no-code provides. I think we talked about limitations earlier, but one of the big question marks is, can it scale? Can it be just as performant? And I think yes. I don't think there's a reason why it can't. And so, we're going to see the power of what no-code platforms and tools can do, and I strongly believe that in the next few years we'll see the next unicorn be built entirely on no-code.
Yeah, and we're going to need that to push the whole thing forward too, right? Because there's definitely just use cases is everything right now. Tara, what about you?
Yeah, so you're asking about what the future of this looks like and also what contribution we each individually want to make. For me, I'm really interested in democratizing who has access to tech and tech entrepreneurship. And I think in order for that to really happen, we have this huge opportunity for that to happen. I think in order for it to happen, we kind of have to change a little bit about how we talk about no code. So I think what that means is I think we talked about Excel, for example, as a reference point, and people know how to use Excel. Actually, only 10% of people know how to use Excel. Most people have never used Excel before. And so we actually have to talk about it slightly different. We have to build our tools slightly differently if we want this to be a mainstream thing. Now, that's going to take all of us to play and to do something different at each part of the levels of sophistication in tech. But I think if we really want to democratize what technology looks like, we almost have to change how we talk about it, right? Even talking about it as no code implies that you even knew that it was built with code and understood that as a concept in the first place. So I think there's a huge opportunity for this to be really mainstream, for people when they say I'm building an app to be talking about no code right? Like as their default. But I think it requires us to speak a little bit differently about it as leaders in the space as we go out and evangelize it. Oh, Christian, you're on mute.
Nice one. Lacey, do you want to say a couple words, or it's still a complicated time?
I will try this again. This is just what it's like working with kids. So joy.
No problem.
No, it's great. So I think so many of the bases have been covered by what's been said. I don't really even know that I have that much to add other than as we have new people coming into the space, like I'm also really big on community aspects as well. So inviting them in, teaching them, showing them, I think is really big because no code is ubiquitous and it applies to so many different types, marketing, product, design. I mean, it really can touch everything. Creating a welcoming space and a space that's inclusive of everyone and supportive of one another, I think is really going to keep the momentum going that we've got.
I fully agree. Yeah. For me, let's see. So I think that in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going, I would like to see 100 million people building with no code. Personally, what I want to do is to really, I'm in the game of aha moments, making people reach goals. Yes, the tools are no code tools because that makes sense, but usually it's a bigger conversation and it's teaching people entrepreneurship from the ground up. No code is just really awesome though. I think that it's like, it's an empowering thing to know that, you know, I think we're coming full loop. Like for about 30 years now, before like 30 years ago, the best skill to have to start a business was like sales and like being able to like get customers. And I think we're coming back to that now that the technology aspect is, the barrier is kind of starting to come down. I think eventually in 5-10 years, like it will again be the best skill to have. And whatever, you know, for me as well, I speak a bunch of languages, so it's about also bringing this to, you know, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French. That's for myself personally, basically. But because I think that a lot of people just don't know about this. This is literally a tiny little thing that no one understands yet, and it's a bunch of geeks talking. And I loved what Tara said, which is just like, hey, like let's bring this, like let's build boring businesses, let's build existing businesses that already work with business models that are proven in communities that just don't have access to this, you know. And I think that this is a good step in the right direction. We still have a lot of work to do though, guys and girls.
Yeah. I would add too, I mean, just speaking from StartupStarter being a new company and us growing at the fast pace that we are, we have really utilized the no-code tools, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to put this together and bring this to people, because we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to democratize entrepreneurship, and what better way to do that is to make it easier for entrepreneurs to be able to operate. And we've used Typeform, we've used Airtable. We've been able to really build a smart community by utilizing no code, so that we can be able to put out an MVP, so we can be able to beta test for these things as we grow and be able to get to a place to where we can either raise capital or have, you know, revenue-based financing our own self. So this is really great. And I mean, it's really good to hear from you guys and as experts and influencers in this space, so that you guys can help and we can help better educate people on what they can do and how they can build a business and take their idea to something big, or again, like you said, Nick, be the next unicorn. So I really appreciate this, guys.
Laura, and we appreciate you and everything that you've put together here with StartupStarter. Just speaking from experience, because he's a buddy from Los Angeles, sort of startup crew. You know, being able to pull this off in 3 weeks is insane, Lorel. You and Jose have done I've like literally like I've been receiving text messages at like 3 a.m. Like, hey, like this thing. It's like really like it takes this kind of thing, and when it comes down to it, it's about reaching more people with this movement, and then just like delivering the right message at the end. So I want to thank you guys at StartupStarter, all the sponsors like Tapcart who, you know, made this event be able to take place. All the panelists, I mean, you guys are phenomenal. You know, I don't even know all of you personally, but I know all of you from the intranet personally. and so it's like, I'm seeing what everyone is building and doing, and it's super exciting. Like, Doc, I can't wait to sit in and watch you just like pump out 3 startups in 3 hours.
Yeah, there's so much that went into this. I mean, the thanks goes to you guys. You guys accepted my emails, you guys accepted my calls, my text messages, and so yeah, I mean, I'm shocked when Christian told me like we did it faster than someone who's put it together in 6 months. I was like, wow, okay, I feel good about myself now because I thought we were behind the whole time. So yeah, we're excited that it has come together. We have a whole string of events coming up. So yeah, it's exciting. Everyone stay tuned as well. But yeah, if we're done here, any final words anyone wants to say? And if not, I will take it over and finish up for everyone and kind of give them some highlights and what's going on for the rest of the week.
Sounds good. Thank you so much,
Lorel. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys soon. Wow. So learning from the best people in the game. That's who we had on this panel. So stay tuned for the rest of the week. Just a few things just to follow up with you guys on so that you guys know what to expect. For one, I want to start by thanking our sponsors, Tapcart, .xyz, Parlay Me, and Beam Conversing for helping put this together and hosting this event with us as well. Again, shout out to our experts, Tara Reed. Thank you from Apps Without Code. Thank you, Doc Williams from Brand Factory, Christian Peverelli from WeAreNoCode, Nick Carroll from Bubble, as well as Sina Mobasser from Tapcart. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy days, your busy schedules to join on this. What's to come for the rest of the week? Coming in the next 30 minutes. At this point, it's 25 minutes. Join us live in Clubhouse and hear more from some of these experts and some additional experts that we will have speaking in this space, and fill your conversations and join in the conversation there live. Also, join StartupStarter for the best experience during No Code Week, where we have a live event page that will continue to have updates of our speakers, where you can meet them, understand who they are, as well as connect with them directly inside of the StartupStarter platform. We are building a smart community just for you guys, so stay up to date with all the updates in there. There is a live feed. You guys can actually go in and continue to speak about what you're building, introduce yourself to the community, and just, again, join for a better experience. Also, what we have done we have created special deals that are specific to you guys during No Code Week that you can also find in that events page. So check that out. Stay up to date with what's going on. We're constantly updating the event as well as links. So just want to make sure that everybody's on board for that. Also, again, we want to thank everyone for joining. We will have Doc Williams back for us. We'll have WeAreNoCode. They will be teaching tomorrow. Doc will teach live, as well as Doc Williams will be teaching live, as well as we will have Sina back on for Founder Story Live to hear his story about how he built Tapcart. From here and there, we thank you for coming, and don't miss out, and keep it up to date with what's going on for the rest of the week. If you miss a session, they will be loaded after every session into the event page. So take care. Again, thank you for joining, and welcome to No Code Week.